James Mason was the star they loved to hate. The vision of him in those profitable Gainsborough melodramas as the sadistic wife-beater with a devilish scowl remained prevalent in the public's consciousness throughout his successful and varied career spanning decades. This villainous image couldn't have been further from the truth. Away from the cameras, James was a deeply sensitive and private man who experienced a mixture of happiness and heartache in his exciting life. The film star who would go on to conquer Hollywood was born here, in Huddersfield, to a rich wool merchant and his wife. In his autobiography, James wrote, "We lived in Croft House Lane, in the house into which my parents had moved at the time of their marriage, and which gave the lane its name. It clearly antedated all the other houses in the lane, built later to accommodate the population growth of the Industrial Revolution." The youngest of 3 children, James had a privileged upbringing here in Yorkshire. At the Theatre Royal on Ramsden Street, James was taken to see Christmas pantomimes as a child, and at the Holy Trinity he was baptised. After studying architecture at Cambridge, Mason struggled to find work in that field, and instead pursued an acting career. In the 1940s, Mason first found fame as the villainous antagonists of the popular Gainsborough melodramas, beginning with The Man in Grey in 1943. Mason was the initial incarnation of what we would now call the anti-hero. Female fans seemed to love his savage and controlling characters, and his velvet voice was so distinctive that it became his trademark.
The lovely Richmond, eh?
Ah, then you agree the sobriquet is suitable? I should think there's about as much truth in it as the things they call you.
Eh? What do you mean?
The Man in Grey. It sounds like a ghost.
Rest assured, I shall never haunt the lovely Richmond.
Away from the cameras, James was provoking controversy in the British press. He had begun to write articles for the national newspapers in which he had openly criticised the British film industry, and especially its most powerful mogul, J. Arthur Rank, who James despised. This would be considered career suicide by the majority of stars, but James didn't seem to care, and it didn't prevent his success. The most scandalous controversy he managed to battle and survive was his refusal to fight during World War II, although he didn't avoid adversity on film sets. One day when filming The Wicked Lady, James punched the director Leslie Arliss, who had made one too many wisecracks about the star being a conscientious objector. When James and his wife Pamela made the move to Hollywood, this controversy followed them. Luckily, the success of his British film The Seventh Veil, co-starring Anne Todd, distracted the American public. His first American success was his performance as Rommel in The Desert Fox, though, in typical Mason fashion, the film wasn't without its controversy. Some American Jews felt that the film glorified Rommel, who was killed by the Nazis after betraying Hitler and giving intel to the English, receiving praise from Churchill in Parliament. James then received his first of 3 Oscar nominations when he starred alongside Judy Garland in the remake of A Star is Born in 1954. Judy and the producer of the film, Sid Luft, desperately wanted Cary Grant to play Norman Maine. But Grant was terrified of playing such a vulnerable character, and the role was handed down to Mason. This pattern of James taking Cary's rejections would continue when Cary refused to play Humbert Humbert in Kubrick's controversial adaptation of Lolita in 1962. Mason's personal life wasn't without its turbulence either. His first wife, Pamela, was married to cameraman Roy Colino, who, strangely, remained close to the Masons after Pamela had left him for James. Pamela was also an actor, and the two had played father and daughter in the film They Were Sisters. But James's stardom massively overshadowed Pamela's, and this caused dissension in their relationship. Their children, Portland and Morgan, were raised in Hollywood. Pamela and the children became fond of life across the pond, but America wasn't what James had anticipated, and he was often homesick. James recalled taking his daughter Portland to see the Bronte parsonage in Haworth, trying to spark an interest in her dad's roots. She was seemingly disinterested and didn't seem to understand the appeal of the Yorkshire countryside that James was so fond of. As a young man, Mason was keen to leave his native Yorkshire and see the rest of the world. But once he found himself increasingly out of place in Hollywood, he longed to return to the place he'd once resented. He conveyed his love of Yorkshire in a TV documentary called Home James from 1972, in which the star returned to his hometown.
I was born in Huddersfield. When I was young, I had very little affection for this part of the country. In fact, when I finished my schooling, I couldn't wait to get away from the place and try my luck in London. But recently, for family reasons, I've been returning here more and more frequently, and in the process, being more and more won over by it. My growing enthusiasm has made me as bad as any other sort of a convert.
This is Georgie Girl, a whole lot of woman.
A whole lot of loving just to keep this baby happy. 'Cause I'm a whole lot of woman. I've gotta have a whole lot of man.
Georgie girl. All I hear is Georgie girl. What's so special about her?
You don't know? Ask James Mason. He knows.
I want you to be my mistress.
Mason found love for a second time when making Age of Consent in Australia in 1969. He shared a brief scene with the actress Clarissa Kay, and the two hit it off immediately. Before long they were in a relationship and happily married. Old friends like Margaret Lockwood recalled seeing a happier James when he was married to Clarissa. Together they relocated to Switzerland, where James became good friends with a silent film legend, Charlie Chaplin. Here in Ilkley, James played the villainous chimney sweep in the 1978 adaptation of The Water Babies. The Water Babies was directed by Lionel Jeffries, and much of the film was shot here at Denton Hall. By this point in 1978, returning to Yorkshire was a nostalgic thrill for James, and now at this grand country mansion he was able to combine his beloved northern roots with the medium he had devoted his life to. The Water Babies, that co-starred the likes of Bernard Cribbins, Joan Greenwood and David Tomlinson, also features scenes shot in the beautiful city of York. One particular shot shows the imposing York Minster in the background. Upon reflecting on his film career, James picked his personal favourites in an interview with the reporter Bobby Wygant, stating that Odd Man Out, Carol Reed's masterpiece, was the crowning achievement of his career. He also shared pride in A Star Is Born and Five Fingers.
My favourite film of all the ones I ever made was one called Odd Man Out, which I had made in England before I came for the first time to the United States. And then after that it was a toss-up as far as I was concerned between Five Fingers, which was a very good film, and A Star Is Born, because A Star Is Born is a really great romantic film, different from anything else I ever did, because most of my other films, they were rather more acerbic, or rather drier, shall we say.
James passed away at home in Switzerland in 1983, leaving behind a filmography of over 100 movies. But stars like James Mason are never truly dead. He is immortalised on screen in timeless classics such as A Star Is Born, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Journey to the Centre of the Earth, North by Northwest, and the list goes on. He may have been known as the star they loved to hate, but friends remembered him as the colleague they loved to work with.
I just want to take another look at you.